cruel in-laws threw out my daughter and her kids, not knowing she'd inherit $50 million. My name is Patricia Morgan. I'm 64 years old, and I watched my daughter Rebecca and my 3 grandchildren get thrown out of their home like yesterday's trash. What her in-laws didn't know was that in exactly 48 hours, Rebecca would inherit $50 million from her late father. And I was about to make sure they regretted every cruel word. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Voice of Mama Zee. Before we dive into today's story, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. This story is about karma, family cruelty, and the moment everything changes. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. It was a Tuesday morning when Rebecca called me, her voice breaking. Mom, they're making us leave. Right now. Kevin's parents said we have until noon to pack our things. My daughter's husband Kevin had died 3 months earlier in a car accident. He was only 38 years old. Rebecca was 36, suddenly a widow with 3 children. Maya, 12, Connor, 9, and baby Lily, just 18 months old. The Hendersons, Kevin's parents, Diane and Robert, owned the house where Rebecca and Kevin had been living. It was technically their property, part of their real estate portfolio, but it had been Kevin and Rebecca's home for 8 years. The children's heights were marked on the kitchen doorframe. Maya's artwork covered the refrigerator. They said what? I asked, already grabbing my car keys. Diane said the grieving period is over. They need the house for Kevin's brother Marcus and his new wife. She said I should be grateful they gave me 3 whole months. 3 months. To process the death of her husband. To help her children understand why daddy wasn't coming home. To figure out how to survive as a single mother with a baby still in diapers. I arrived at the house 40 minutes later to find Rebecca on the front lawn, surrounded by hastily packed boxes and garbage bags. Connor was crying. Maya held baby Lily, who was wailing in confusion. Diane Henderson stood on the porch, arms crossed, looking at her watch. Patricia, Diane said when she saw me, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I'm sure you understand this is just business. We can't let sentiment interfere with practical decisions. Practical? I said, walking toward her. You're evicting your son's widow and your grandchildren. What's practical about that? The house is worth $800,000, Robert said, appearing behind his wife. Marcus is willing to pay fair market rent. Rebecca can't. It's economics. These are your grandchildren, I said, gesturing to the crying children. Your son's children. Diane's face hardened. Kevin made his choices. He married a woman with no family money, no connections, no prospects. We warned him. We told him Rebecca would be a burden eventually. Rebecca flinched as if she'd been slapped. We've been more than generous, Robert continued. We paid for a modest funeral. We gave her 3 months rent-free. But we have to think about our family's future. Marcus has real earning potential. Rebecca is a part-time school counselor with 3 mouths to feed. You know what? I said, stepping closer to Diane. You're absolutely right. You do need to think about your family's future. So let me give you some advice. In exactly 2 days, something is going to happen that will make you regret this moment for the rest of your lives. Diane smirked. Are you threatening us? I'm promising you, I replied. You're making the biggest mistake of your lives, and you're too arrogant to see it. We loaded everything into a moving truck I'd rented. Rebecca was silent, moving mechanically. The children were traumatized. Maya kept asking if this was because she'd been bad. Connor had stopped crying and gone completely quiet, which worried me more. My house was small, a 3-bedroom in a modest neighborhood, but it was paid off and it was home. Rebecca and the baby took the guest room. Maya got the small office. Connor insisted on sleeping on the couch because he wanted to protect everyone. That night, after the children were finally asleep, Rebecca broke down completely. I don't know how to do this, Mom, she sobbed. I'm drowning. I'm drowning and nobody cares. I care, I said, holding her. And Kevin cared. More than you know. What do you mean? I took a breath. This was the moment. Sweetheart, I need to tell you something about your father. About Gerald. My late husband Gerald had died when Rebecca was 22, 14 years ago. He'd been a quiet man, a software engineer who worked for the same tech company for 30 years. We lived modestly, never flashy, never extravagant. What Rebecca didn't know was that Gerald had been an early investor in that tech company. He'd taken stock options instead of higher salary for years, believing in the company's vision. When the company went public in the late 90s, those stocks became worth millions. Gerald never touched the money. He kept working, kept living in our modest house, kept driving his 10-year-old car. Money changes people, he'd always said, and rarely for the better. But he'd set up a trust, one that would transfer to Rebecca on her 36th birthday, a date he'd chosen deliberately, believing she'd be mature enough to handle it wisely. "Your birthday is in 2 days," I said. "On Thursday you turn 36. And when you do, you inherit everything your father left you. $50 million, Rebecca. Give or take a few million depending on the market." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "That's not possible. Dad was an engineer. We lived in a regular house. We shopped at regular stores. Your father was brilliant with money. He just didn't believe in showing it off. He wanted you to grow up normal, to understand the value of work and struggle. He wanted to make sure that when you finally got this money, you'd be the kind of person who'd use it wisely." $50 million, she whispered. "In 2 days. The trust manager will contact you Thursday morning. Gerald set it all up before he died. I wasn't allowed to tell you until 3 days before your birthday." Rebecca was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "The Hendersons don't know." "No," I agreed. "They have no idea." A spark appeared in her eyes. Not revenge exactly, but something harder. "Justice. What do we do?" she asked. I smiled. "We wait 48 hours. Then we have a conversation." Thursday morning, Rebecca's phone rang at 9 a.m. sharp. James Caldwell from Caldwell Trust Management, calling to inform her that she now had access to her inheritance. He'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss investment strategies and wealth management. Rebecca was calm, surprisingly calm, as she took the call. When she hung up, she looked at me and said, "I want to go see them. The Hendersons. I want to see their faces." "Are you sure?" "I need them to know what they did. I need them to understand that they threw away their grandchildren for $800,000 when they could have had a relationship with a family that had $50 million. We drove to the Henderson estate, because of course they lived on an estate, a sprawling property in the wealthy suburbs. Marcus's car was in the driveway alongside his parents' Mercedes. Diane answered the door, her expression souring when she saw us. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to return these," Rebecca said, holding out a small box. Inside were the keys to the house they'd been evicted from. "And to let you know I've made some decisions about my future." "That's nice, dear," Diane said dismissively. "But we're quite busy today." "I've decided to establish a trust fund for my children," Rebecca continued as if Diane hadn't spoken. "The Maya Henderson Educational Trust, the Connor Henderson Medical Fund, and the Lily Henderson Arts Endowment. Each worth approximately $15 million. The color drained from Diane's face. "I'm sorry, what?" Robert appeared behind his wife. "I inherited money from my father. Quite a lot of money. It became available this morning, on my 36th birthday. The birthday you forgot, by the way." Marcus emerged from the house, looking confused. "What's going on?" "Your brother's widow is apparently wealthy," Diane said, her voice strangled. "Not apparently," I interjected. "Definitely. $50 million to be precise. You could have heard a pin drop." "Of course I'll be making other investments too," Rebecca continued, her voice steady. "I'm buying a house. Nothing too extravagant. Maybe 4 or 5 bedrooms, good school district, big backyard for the kids. I'm also establishing a foundation in Kevin's name for young families who've lost a parent. And I'm funding a scholarship program at the community college where Kevin and I met." "Rebecca," Diane's voice was suddenly warm. "Sweetheart, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Rebecca said. "You made it very clear that my children and I were a burden, that we had no value to your family. You were right about one thing though. You do need to think about your family's future. Unfortunately for you, we're no longer part of it." Now wait just a minute, Robert blustered. Those are our grandchildren. We have rights. You gave up those rights when you threw us out, I said. You chose real estate over relationships. You chose money over your son's memory. Those children cried themselves to sleep wondering what they did wrong to make Grandma and Grandpa stop loving them. We were just being practical. Diane protested. No, Rebecca said. You were being cruel. There's a difference. Practical would have been giving me time to figure things out. Cruel was forcing 3 grieving children out of the only home they've ever known because you wanted to charge your other son rent. This is ridiculous, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he looked uncomfortable. I want you to know something, Rebecca continued. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment of joy in my children's lives, you won't be there for any of it. Maya's graduation, Connor's first soccer trophy, Lily's first day of school. You traded all of that for $800,000 a year in rental income. We can work something out, Diane said desperately. Family should stay together. You're right, Rebecca agreed. Family should stay together. That's why my children and I will be just fine. We have my mom. We have each other. We have Kevin's memory to guide us. And we have the resources now to build whatever life we want. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, one more thing. I've instructed my attorney to send you a formal letter declining any future contact. You won't be invited to birthdays, holidays, or family events. You're not grandparents anymore. You're just the people who threw us away. As we walked back to the car, I heard Diane calling after us, her voice cracking, but Rebecca didn't turn around. How do you feel? I asked once we were driving away. Lighter, she said. I thought I'd feel angry or vindictive. But I just feel free. They don't get to hurt us anymore. 6 months later, Rebecca had purchased a beautiful home with a yard that backed onto a park. Maya had her own room with an art studio. Connor had space for his Lego projects. Baby Lily had a playroom that looked like something from a magazine. The Kevin Anderson Foundation had funded its first 10 families, helping widows and widowers with young children get back on their feet. Rebecca had hired a financial advisor, established college funds for all 3 children, and still had more money than she'd ever need. The Henderson family had tried to make contact several times, cards, emails, even showing up at the new house once. Rebecca had been firm but not cruel in her refusals. She'd simply explained that trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild. I was having tea with Rebecca in her new kitchen, when she brought up something I hadn't expected. I've been thinking about forgiving them, she said. The Hendersons? Not forgetting. Not giving them access to the kids. But maybe letting go of the anger. For my sake, not theirs. That's very mature of you. Dad's money gave me choices, she said. But it didn't heal what they did. Only I can do that. And holding on to rage only hurts me and the kids. A year after the inheritance, Rebecca did something that surprised everyone. She established a scholarship fund in Diane and Robert Henderson's names. Not as a gesture of reconciliation, but as a monument to the lesson they'd taught her. The Henderson Family Values Scholarship, it was called, awarded annually to young people who'd overcome family rejection or abandonment. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially the Hendersons, who'd heard about it through their social circle. Why did you do that? I asked her. Because they taught me something valuable, Rebecca explained. They taught me that how you treat people when they're vulnerable reveals everything about your character. That wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in compassion. That my children will never, ever treat people the way they were treated. Your father would be so proud of you, I said, tears in my eyes. I hope so. Not because of the money. Anyone can inherit money. But because I'm trying to use it the way he would have. To make life better for people who need it. To teach my kids that having resources means having responsibility. Today, Rebecca and her children are thriving. Maya is in high school, a talented artist who volunteers teaching art to underprivileged kids. Connor is in middle school, already talking about becoming a doctor. Lily is 4 years old, bright and joyful, with no memory of that terrible day when her family was thrown out. The Hendersons live with their choices. They see their grandchildren in photos that mutual acquaintances sometimes share. They know about the foundation, the scholarships, the life Rebecca has built. They know what they missed. Diane sent a letter last Christmas. It wasn't an apology, not really, but an explanation. She tried to justify their actions, to make Rebecca understand the pressure they'd been under, the financial considerations they'd faced. Rebecca read it once and threw it away. Some people never learn, she told me. They still think this is about money. They still don't understand that they didn't lose access to $50 million. They lost their grandchildren. And no amount of money can buy back what they threw away. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone face consequences for their cruelty? Let's talk about it. Until next time, remember, how you treat people when they have nothing reveals everything about who you really are. This is Mama Zee.